Trump is already pivoting to the general. And what's really interesting is that I saw one of a billionaire, I forget the guy's name, but he was the one who had challenged Elizabeth Warren on her wealth tax. So he's very critical of progressive policy. But he ended up voting for Biden reluctantly because he hates Trump. But now he says if it's Trump Biden, he's just not going to vote because he thinks Biden is so incompetent. Even though he despises Trump, he actually said that he thinks Trump should be in prison. He just says he won't vote, even though he did vote for Biden because he thinks Biden's a total disaster. So that's where I actually think if you look at the motivation of voters right now, Trump voters are motivated voters, and Biden voters are not motivated. There's just no enthusiasm for him. He's old. I mean, you know how I feel about him. But I'm just saying objectively from a data standpoint, Biden voters are not excited. So the question is just, again, from a strategy standpoint, is there anything the Democrats can do to overcome that enthusiasm gap? Because I think a lot of people are going to stay home unless like 2022 was like mobilizing around abortion. But the thing is, now that people have had 2 years to absorb this big change and they're actually seeing at their state level, in the progressive states that a lot of them are actually having looser abortion restrictions. And we're seeing an expansion of abortion by mail. So they see that their worst fears are not being realized. So I don't think it will be as much of a motivator as it was in 2022. So I think right now, I think it's probably going to be Trump in the White House again. But I don't know. I'm not going to, I don't make pronouncements definitively anymore in the age of Trump.
I'm with you. And I would say, first of all, I would partially agree with you on the abortion thing. But I do believe that I know a lot of people, living in a very pro-choice state and spending time in pro-choice states like New York, there are a lot of people, and I'm one of who have friends and people who live in red states that hear these horror stories. And you're seeing obviously things like the Ohio initiative, which follows the Kansas initiative last year, where people are going to vote to enshrine it in the Constitution. So will it be as much of an issue in 22? Probably not, but it'll be a driving issue. But I do agree with you. And look, a year ago, I implored Biden not to run. So there's nobody as a never Trumper Republican who's more disappointed by the fact that Biden's running again. I think it's selfish. I think his history will be much less kind to him, even if he is reelected. And I do agree with you. If the election were held today, Trump would probably win. It would be very close. But there's still a year off. And I think the time, considering now it looks like these auto strikes are going to be settled, that would have been a real thorn in his side. And we'll have to see what happens in the Middle East, because you have a lot of, and we don't want to get into talking about, that's a whole other issue about all these protests, pro-Hamas stuff. That could divide the Democrats. And but where Biden really does well is when people don't like either candidate, they break overwhelmingly for Biden. And that's why the third party candidates this year are more of a threat than they are in other years. But I think that no labels, it's a great marketing campaign. I don't think they're going to do it in the end. And hopefully Cornel West isn't going to get that much traction, but we'll see. But I think that whatever the case is, even if Trump is a favorite right now, Nikki Haley would be that much more of a favorite. Nobody doesn't think that Nikki Haley is more electable than Donald Trump. And she's without the baggage. And she's the kind of Republican that could bring new members into the party. I mean, this is the question I always ask. Who's undecided on Donald Trump? Tell me one voter, maybe your guy, he's the only one I know, who didn't vote for him in 20 that are going to vote for him in 24. There's no expanding base. There's no next generation or a group of voters that he's reaching out to. Nikki Haley is the perfect transitional candidate as the first woman president, a woman of color. Plus, she's a governor. Governors make better presidents. We need governors. They know how to run governments. So I'm very hopeful, and I would take a serious look at voting for her. It would have to depend, obviously, on who the running mate was and a lot of the stuff. But we will see what happens. But fingers crossed, it's our only hope.